So we're carrying on today, like Daniel said, with our Art of Human series, Art of Being Human. And Ben spoke a bit last week about the Sabbath, and we're kind of going to keep journeying with that. So the concept of the Sabbath is something that's quite unfamiliar to a lot of us. I think for me, it's something that I've not really thought about very much until the last year or so. Mainly because I thought it was a Jewish thing, and just kind of left it over there in the Old Testament. You know, I know that it's in the Ten Commandments. I know that it comes up a lot in the Old Testament, but it is also in the New Testament a lot. It comes up again and again. Jesus talks about the practice of it. He talks about why we do it. It's not just in the Bible as this rule and regulation or something we have to do. It's actually in the Bible as an encouraged practice, as a rhythm for us to get into. And I work for the Message Trust. I work for a Christian charity, so yes, representing the entire room nearly. So that's what we do. But in any kind of Christian ministry, and any kind of ministry probably, you hear phrases all the time like rest like your life depends on it, and we don't want to get to the stage of burnout, and we talk a good talk about all that kind of thing. We talk about it all the time, but in terms of actually putting it into practice, for me personally, it's something that I've not set as a thing in my life. It's not a rhythm that I've set for myself. It's just something that I'm like, when I get the time, I'm going to have an evening off there. Maybe I will have a couple of hours of rest between making dinner and going to bed there. It's not actually something that I've kind of put as something that I do, and I don't think for a lot of us it is. I think it's something we talk about, but actually aren't really sure how to do it. So like I said, in the last year or so, something that Dave and I have been thinking about a lot is Sabbath, and it's something I've been listening to a lot of podcasts on. I've been looking into the Bible of where does it come up in the Bible, where is it in Scripture, and kind of been thinking about what does it actually look like. And the first podcast I listened to actually is the one that kind of sticks with me the most, and it was from a pastor at a church in New York, and he was basically looking at his congregation and realised that they were just going all the time. The culture of New York, the work culture, you know, is kind of this thing of just keep going until you're knackered, miss your family meal that night, get home late, it's fine, don't worry about it as long as you get your job done. Work overtime, you might not get paid for it, but do it anyway. It's this kind of culture of just keep going, your job is who you are, it's what you need to do. And he looked around at his congregation and realised that they were knackered, that they were all burnt out, that they were all tired, and they were just plodding through life. And actually there wasn't life in the congregation anymore, they were all really, really tired. So he did this series on Sabbath, and it really hit me because what he was talking about was like, that's not how we're built. We're not built to just keep going and going until we collapse on the floor. We're built to go and do what we're called to, and then to stop. And to stop for a bit, and to rest, and to renew, and to refresh ourselves. That's kind of what we talked about last week, of what the Sabbath is. Just to let you know, I get a really dry mouth whenever I do any public speaking, so that's why this is here. So I'm okay, but if it gets a bit every now and then, it's all right. I just need a little bit of water. I'm okay. I'm not freaking out. It's just something that happens, and it's what it is. So what the Sabbath is, for me and Dave, we've been trying to practice the Sabbath for 6 months to a year, maybe now. And for us, what it looks like, it's quite simple. It's 6 till 6, Friday to Saturday, just kind of stopping. Friday nights, usually we'll have a date night, or we'll hang out with some friends. Okay, date night. Hang out with some friends or family, and we'll eat, because thank the Lord, that's a part of what Sabbath is feasting, and I really enjoy that part. We maybe went a bit overboard with that at the start, like, let's get Domino's in, let's go to Creams and get a waffle after because it's the Sabbath. And it's like, probably not quite what it is. We probably missed it slightly there, and just were using it as an excuse to go a little bit crazy post-wedding. But we eat, we feast, we celebrate, we're thankful for that time, and then on Saturday as well, we try and do the same thing again. We try and be doing something rather than just crashing out on the sofa at the weekend, which I know is very, very tempting. But for us, that's kind of the basics of what Sabbath looks like. It's not a big complicated thing, it's just something that we're trying to practice and implement in our daily routine and in our weekly routine. So what I want to talk a little bit about this week is how the Sabbath relates to the rest of the week. Because we're talking about the Sabbath as a 24-hour period, whatever that looks like for you, whether it's a Saturday or a Sunday or some other time in the week because your work hours are different. But what we want to look at is, how does it relate to our work? How should we see our work as well? And the Sabbath and work are intrinsically linked. The Sabbath assumes that there's been 6 days of work. It's not I'm just going to have another day of chilling out if we've chilled out all week. It's not what it is. What it is it assumes we've been working, and working doesn't necessarily mean our job, by the way. It's work. It's what we're putting our hands to during the week. And it gives us a day where time is shaped differently, where we're not bound by our 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or whatever kind of job that we've got and our different rules and regulations and responsibilities throughout the week. But our time is different. We're not bound by that time. But it's not an excuse for laziness and another day off, as much as some of us would probably like it to be. But what it is, it's a day when the rhythms that we go by are different, and we try and reflect the rhythms that Jesus shows us all throughout the New Testament. We see the way that Jesus worked and rested throughout the Gospels, how he did withdraw on his own, but actually a lot of the time he went and hung out with people, and that was his rest in his community, not just on his own. Being on your own is important. Having a day off sometimes is also important, but that's not what Sabbath is. Sabbath is something different. So the first thing that I think is really important to kind of get our heads around is that work is not a punishment for sin. Our work is not something that we're being punished for because we've been bad. You know, if you look back to Genesis 3, we see Adam and Eve mess up a little bit. We see sin come into the world and we see the fall. The curse that Eve gets is pain in childbirth, which I'm sure I'll be super, super grateful for at some point. Thank you, Eve, that's great. But we're not talking about that one today. We're talking about the curse that Adam gets. And the curse that Adam receives off the back of sin is toil. Now, toil and work are not the same thing. So if you think about toil, the way it's defined is to work extremely hard or incessantly, so just constantly, or to be in some kind of exhausting physical labour. Now, toil came after the fall. Work was already there. In the first instance, we see God at work. God created, God made with his hands, God did something. God was working right from the start of creation. That's what Genesis 1 and 2 are all about, is God working. And actually, again, towards the end of Genesis 2, I'm going to say, I think it's 2. Towards the end of Genesis 2, we see Adam at work. We see God give him a task. God gives him the job of naming the animals. That's his work. And at this point, work is what it should be. Work is worship to God. It's God giving us a task, God giving us a calling, and us responding to that in a way that gives him glory, in a way that is worship to him. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, what it's kind of become is it's something that we do worship. It's something that we put on a pedestal. Our work isn't something anymore, generally, that we see as, this is my worship to God. This is my surrender to God, is to do this, that he's called me to. We've put it on something as, this is who I am. My job is who I am. My work is who I am. I don't know about you, but when someone says to me, what do you do? My first response is my job. Now, I do a whole load of stuff other than my job. I hang out with my friends. I love brunch. Most of you in the room probably know that because I'm very open about it. I'm a brunch evangelist. But, and Jesus, don't worry. But I love brunch. I love making stuff. I run a business on the side as well. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter. There's all these things that I do. But when someone says to me, what do you do? My answer is my job. And that's not a bad thing, but it's just something that I was thinking about this week of, is that what I think defines me? Is my job, is what I'm doing, is the work that I'm putting my hands to. And work isn't the enemy, but it's not who we are. It's not what defines us. We're meant to work and to stop, to rest as well. We're not all working all the time. Here we go, number 2. I hate when you pick something up when you're talking because everyone can see how shaky your hands are. You're doing great. Thanks, babe. I am okay, just to be clear, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. I just get a bit funny when I'm in front of people. But that's all good. So, as a society in general, I've kind of come into this place where we celebrate being busy. We celebrate people being worn out. Like when someone says to you, I had a really busy week at work, we're like, wow, you must have been so productive. You must have got so much done. And we kind of cheer it on. If someone was to say, like, I've just had a really chilled week this week, we kind of be like, okay, don't know what you're getting paid for, a bit awkward. But actually, that's all right to have a chilled week every now and then. But for some reason, we cheer on busyness. We cheer on when people are knackered at the end of the week because they've just gone all out. and they've got, oh, I've not had this month, I've not had a day off, I've not had a break, and we cheer that on. And actually, I don't think we need to be doing that. I don't think we should be doing that, because our success should not be measured by how worn out we are at the end of the week.
Yeah.
Our success shouldn't be measured by the fact that we're really, really tired when we finally crash and sit down. There's a book that I read a few years ago called Addicted to Busy by a pastor called Brady Boyd in America, and I was just rereading it again when I was planning for today. And he's what would be called a mega church pastor. You get there one day, Ben. Joking. We're mega. He's a mega church pastor in America, and thank you, Lucy. And he's talking in a place that his church is thriving and everything's going really, really well. And this is what he says about it. But I liked how success felt. I didn't want to unplug. I didn't want to relax. The last thing I craved was rest. To allow any semblance of space to come between our church's newfound success and me was to cause the undesirable effects of withdrawal. I had become an addict again, an addict in search of a fix, a speed and wild success junkie who never wanted to come down, and so I didn't. This is how so many of us find rest, remember. Sometimes it just finds us. Now that last little bit kind of went, oh, no, don't like that, because I don't want to be in that situation. I don't want rest to find me. I don't want rest to catch up with me. You know, I know so many people who they've just worked and worked, and they've been doing really good stuff, don't get me wrong. It's not that their work was bad, but they kept going to the point that they've got ill, physically or mentally, whatever that looks like. They've gotten well, and they've had to stop, and they've had to rest because they've not been able to work anymore. And I don't want to be in that position. I don't want rest to catch up with me. I don't want it to be forced on me. I want to choose it now. I want to implement it now and put rhythms in place in my life that actually I have a way of facilitating it now, so I don't have to wait until it knocks me on my backside. Actually, I'm putting it in place right now. So there's three main things that I kind of want to draw out and talk about today. The first one is that Sabbath is made for man. Now, again, as I was reading through the New Testament this week, there's quite a lot in Mark 2 and 3 about the Sabbath. Jesus is having a lot of conversations with the Pharisee, and one of the first things that he says about it is, the Sabbath is made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Yeah, I thought I'd quoted that wrong, but I haven't. He talks about how the Sabbath is for man. It's something that's intended to help people. It's something that's good for us. It's not an extra burden. And I think a lot of the time, because I'd seen it as this thing that is in Jewish law, and you know, a lot of Jewish families practice the Sabbath, and it's a whole separate thing, I think I'd always just assumed it was like this extra regulation in your life, this extra thing that you have to do that kind of adds to the workload, rather than actually recognizing that it's not a burden and it frees you up. And a lot of people argue that the Sabbath is law and I don't have to do it. And I'm like, that's great. If you don't want to have to do it, then don't. But I would encourage you to regardless, because actually when you're doing it in the way that it's supposed to be done, in the way that Jesus reflects the Sabbath, it's life-giving. Yeah. It doesn't take things away. It doesn't stifle you. It doesn't hold you down. It's not a legalistic thing, but it frees you up to become more of who you were supposed to be, because that's the rhythm that was set right at the beginning of time. It's what God did. God didn't need to rest. Okay, God is God. God is all-powerful. He has all the power in the entire universe and beyond. He is almighty. He does not get tired, but he rested. And what he did was set a standard there for us to copy, to mirror, and to reflect the rhythm that he has set. It gives us life when we feel burdened. It doesn't add to that burden. It says in Isaiah 30, verse 15, "Only in returning to me and resting in me will you be saved. In quietness and confidence is your strength." That verse, oh, hello. Where have I gone? Oh, I'm on red. Thank you. That's on red, Laura. Settle. Enough. Where was I? Yes. So that verse, it's in the context of the Israelites are just trying to do everything for themselves. They're like, we'll go to Egypt. We'll ask them to sort it out for us. Maybe we could do this. Maybe we could try this. Why don't we do it this way? And they're just constantly going around it. We'll keep doing. We'll keep going after it. And God just says, only in returning to me and resting in me will you be saved. In quietness and confidence is your strength. It's not about carrying on and going and going. The Sabbath is given to us because real rest is found nowhere except for Jesus. It's great to chill out on the sofa, don't get me wrong. It's great to have a day off. It's great to go on holiday. They're not bad things, like to vacate, like we talked about last week. That's not a bad thing, every now and then, to go on a vacation, to go on a holiday. But real, true rest isn't found there. It's found in the presence of Jesus.
Yeah.
Someone called Dr. Christine Syme, and I really, really like this one, says that since our lives are increasingly disconnected from the rhythm of God's world, we do not hear the underlying whisper of God's heartbeat that is meant to sustain us. And we are unaware of the symptoms that should alert us to our growing ill health. I don't want to be too busy that I miss those things. I want to recognise that Sabbath is something God's given me to keep me aware, to keep me alert for when things are getting too much. Actually, I'm having a bit of a funny time at work at the moment, and I've been here, there, everywhere, tired, a bit stressed out, a bit this. But actually, the practice of Sabbath in my week has done wonders for that. I've not been as overwhelmed as I'm almost definitely sure that I would have been. I've been so much more rested because this regular practice is in my life already. I think if it hadn't been and this stuff was going on, I don't know what I'd be like. I think I'd probably be on the floor a little bit, feeling completely knocked back. But because these rhythms are already in my life, it's something that I'm more prepared for, because the Sabbath is something that has been given to us as a gift. It's meant to sustain us, not give us more rules. It's life-giving, and it's a gift from God. Second thing to talk about is that maybe it's time to unplug. And this might be literally, and it's usually a very, very unpopular opinion with people in the 21st century, but maybe we need to just put stuff down. Maybe we need to put our phones down. Emma Jeffrey, I'm joking, she's on social media, it's okay. Maybe we're supposed to put our phones down, our iPads, our laptops. We've got all sorts of stuff in front of us that actually maybe we should just be putting it down.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I get this from my mum, I love to be needed. I love to be able to help people, and I'll fix that for you, I'll help you with that. I love doing that. And that in itself isn't a bad thing. But what it can do is it means that every disturbance that comes your way, every request that comes your way can feel like an emergency. It's like, I'll deal with that for you. I can take care of that. I work in prison. I work in a prison, and part of the work that I do is when the guys get out of the prison, I work with them in the community as well. And I have a work phone that they can get in touch with me on. And it's so easy when the call comes through at like 10 at night to be like, I need to answer it. What is going to happen to them if I don't answer that? Anything could happen. They could be sat out on the street, and if I don't answer this call, that's it. It's the end of everything. If I don't reply to this text that they've sent that says I'm having a bit of a bad day, it's all on me. And actually, we're a bit enslaved to being plugged in, to needing to be connected to people all the time. But actually, we're not as important as we think we are. Controversial. But we kind of need to remember it, because we can put ourselves on this pedestal if I don't do that, everything will collapse. And what that can do, if we're not careful, is put us on a higher pedestal than God. And that shouldn't be how it is. You know, we should be trusting that God will complete the work. If we work and work until we're finished, we won't stop, because we're never finished. There's always something to do. For those of you who write to-do lists, I know for me, the list gets bigger. As I cross something off, there's like another 2 or 3 things that pop on it, because I'll get an email or someone will come into the office and say, can you just do this? And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. If we wait until the work is done to stop and rest, that will never happen.
Yeah.
We'll never actually stop. We'll never actually sit down. We have to leave it undone. And that's a really difficult thing for a lot of us. It's something that I would definitely struggle with. I have, because I want to get it finished. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I want it done. And I want it good, and I want it sorted. But actually, sometimes we have to just go, right, that's it. I'm putting that away. Now it's time for Sabbath. It's got to 5 to 6 on a Friday night, and I need to put that down. And frequently, I'll give him credit where it's due, Dave has shut my laptop or taken it away from me. Good job, Dave.
Yes, Dave. On the base.
Credit. It's the man of the house. Thank you, Sammy. Yeah. But because I'm not going to do it, I'm going to keep going, and he needs to stop me. It'd be nice if I could do that on my own, and I think I'll get to the point where I can do that, but actually to have someone that I'm accountable to make me stop is really important. And I'd encourage you to get someone like that just maybe drops you a text and says, have you rested? Have you stopped yet? Because we need to stop. As much as the work is great, it's not bad in itself. We need to stop. Wayne Muller says, this one little conversation, this one extra phone call, this one quick meeting, what can it cost? But it does cost. It drains yet another drop of our life. Then at the end of days, weeks, months, years, we collapse. We burn out and cannot see where it happened. It happened in 1,000 unconscious events, tasks, and responsibilities that seemed easy and harmless on the surface, but that each one after the other used a small portion of our precious life. And again, that one really got me because it doesn't seem like a big thing. Like when Dave takes the laptop off me, I'm just one more email, I need to just answer this a second because if I don't, this might happen. Or I'm just going to finish polishing off this little bit in this document that I've got to do. Or maybe I'll just send a text to them, just double check they're okay. And they're not big things, they're little things, but when we add them all up, you know, the amount of our energy, the amount of our headspace that those things take up, we're going to drop at some point. We're going to burn out because it doesn't seem like a big thing, but when you keep doing a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, it adds up to a lot. And we don't see where it's come from, and suddenly we're burnt out and we're like, how did that even happen? And it's because we didn't choose to stop. We'll never be finished. We have to choose to stop, not wait till it's all finished. We're talking about unplugging as well. In terms of maybe literally putting things down. We like to think we're really, really connected now in our 21st century society because we've got Facebook and Instagram, and I don't know if people still use Twitter. The only time I use it is in the pub quiz because you get extra points if you tweet something. That's it. Top tip, by the way. You're welcome. But that's it. But we've got so many different platforms now, and then we've got our texts, and our WhatsApps and our emails from all of our different email addresses that we've got. And actually, we think we're really connected to everyone we may have ever known because you met them and they added you on Facebook and you accepted it. And now you see everything they're doing all the time and you don't really need to know. And we think we're really, really connected, but actually we're less connected than we ever have been. Because, I don't know about you, but I've met people before and I've been like, I know so much about you already. This is really weird because I've seen them on other people's Facebook. I've seen them be tagged in a post by someone else that says something about them. And then I don't ask the questions because I already know the answer. So I'm not bothering investing the time. But technology is not community. It's not the same thing. Our Facebook and our Instagram and all that kind of stuff, it can keep us in touch with the people who are our community, but it's not community for us. It's something very, very different. It's a screen in front of our face. It's not a person. We need to remember it because when we start to live our relationships through a phone, they're not going to stay sustained. They're not going to be real anymore. They're going to just be this kind of face value thing. And the Sabbath is a day where our vision kind of pauses for a little bit and our agenda is just on hold. And we trust that God's going to do it even when we stop. The third thing that I want to just touch on is about being in community. So we've established that technology is not that, but what does it look like to be in community? Now, the Hebrew word for rest. Now, I've practiced saying this in the week. I even asked the chaplain in the prison who speaks Latin and Hebrew and Greek and a bit of Aramaic and all this, and he said it with a sound on the end, but I can't, just can't get on board with it and do it. And it's menua. And I've been practicing it all week because it sounds like manure. Let's just get it out the way now. I know that's what it sounds like, but that's not what it is. It's menua. And what that is rest with menua. It's rest with celebration. And unfortunately, what that does not look like is getting home from work on a Friday and crashing on the sofa and binge watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, of which I am guilty. Other Netflix and Amazon Prime series are available also. It's not an advertisement, but that's not what it looks like. It doesn't look like crashing out and binge watching a whole host of episodes. And I mean, I did it 2 days ago, I'm not going to lie to you, but I didn't feel refreshed at the end of that. I didn't feel filled with joy. It's a funny show, gives me a few giggles, but actually I'm not refreshed by it, I'm not renewed by it, I've not come into the presence of God doing that. And what rest on the Sabbath truly is with your community and celebrating with food, like I said, which is always great, with fun, again, always great, and with your friends and with your family. Now, just as a caveat for family, obviously, what Sabbath talks about in the Bible is your family. For a lot of us, we don't have to get caught up in, is it my actual family? Who is our family? Our church family? You know, I moved here from Cardiff. I don't have any of my actual family around me. But, and you understand, you're going even further. But I have family. Oh, got a bit emotional then. I have family here. And I'm so grateful for that, because I have people that if I need them, they're there. And find those people, even if your family aren't here. You know, blood only goes a certain amount of the way. Actually, it's something different. It's who you choose to create your family with. Who do you choose to be in your family? And this is family. We're here as the church together, and this is our church family. So you have family. Even if you're sat there like, I have no family. Yes, you do. Look around you. This is your family. So the Sabbath isn't just about going to your blood family, your literal family. It's about being around the people who give you life, being around the people who, thank you, being around the people who you give life to as well, and being in genuine community. And even though the Sabbath is about renewing ourselves and it's about refreshing ourselves, there's a really key part of it that I've been thinking about over the last few days, is that actually it's got a whole host of stuff to do with serving others in that as well. Mark 3:4, the Pharisees are trying to tell Jesus that he's broken the Sabbath because he healed a man with a shriveled hand. And Jesus turns around to them and says, does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save life or destroy it? It's not a day off, it's a day in community, but it's not a day where we do nothing. We don't need to stop ourselves serving in order to really practice the Sabbath. In the context of thinking about, most people might take their Sabbath on a Sunday, but wait, I'm on the church rota. Can I really Sabbath properly if I'm on that? Please don't go onto Planning Centre and block out every Sunday from here on. If you're planning on practicing the Sabbath, I beg of you, please don't do that. But we can serve and still rest, because when we really get to grips with what our service is, that it's worship and it's community and it's fellowship, that fits into Sabbath. It's not about stopping everything and going, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm just having a day where I'm like chilling, laying back. I'll hang out with my friends, I'm not doing anything. It's not what it looks like. You know, Jesus didn't heal this guy for his own benefit only. It was to bring glory to God, and it was for the benefit of the other person. And he did that on the Sabbath. And he says good deeds are a good thing to do on the Sabbath. It is a day of rest, but it's a consecrated day. It's a sanctified day. It's a day that's to be kept holy. And what that looks like is doing good things on it as well. Yeah. And also, this isn't here, but I just want to say it because it's something I think we need to just remember. When we're like, I'm really, really tired and I need to rest. If you're practicing your Sabbath on a Sunday, please come to church. Please come to your church family, because actually it's more restful to be here. I know that I found that throughout my life. I've been like, I'm just going to take the morning off, actually. And then gone, no, I'm not. What am I doing? That's my family. That's my community. I need to go. I need to worship Jesus around my community. That's where I need to be. I don't need to be in bed for an extra hour or two. I need to be with people, hearing the word and worshipping God. And then hanging out and going for church lunch. Win-win. So please don't withdraw if you feel like you need to rest. You need to get into community, not take yourself away from it. As a side note again on that, serving, I love a side note, as obviously serving is worship and serving is a good thing, but what we just need to be aware of as well is that some of us never stop helping other people. We never stop doing stuff for other people. We never take any time of like, I need to stop, I need to do this is what's going to refresh me. And the Sabbath is finding a really happy medium between the two, that you don't have to go, I'm doing nothing for anyone else. Serve people, but also it is about, are you being refreshed and renewed? Are you spending time in the presence of God? Do you need to just actually go, I'm going to sit with my Bible and I'm going to pray, me and God? That's also okay. It is okay to say no sometimes to stuff, as good as the stuff might be. When I was at uni, I was doing everything that you could possibly do. I got there and I joined the CU, I joined a church. I was helping with the kids team at the church, the youth team at the church. I was doing club culture with the CU, which is like a street pastors kind of thing. going to CU, helping on teams, and there was not a night in the week that I wasn't doing something. And then I had the full days of lectures. And I was at a prayer breakfast one week with the CU, because that's something else that we did, at 7:30 on a Thursday morning. And Wednesday night, by the way, was the night that everyone went out. And then you had to get up for prayer breakfast at 7:30 in the morning. Nope, not doing that again. But I was at prayer breakfast, and we did this thing where you drew around your hand on a piece of paper and wrote your name in it. And then you pass it around the circle, and people would write words that they felt they got from God for you. And I'll never forget it. And I had no idea who wrote it in the room, but they just wrote on it, "It's okay to say no sometimes." And I got it, and I was like, oh, yeah, I need to. I can't be serving on all of these teams. I can't be going to every event. I can't be going out as a witness with my friends every time they go into town. I can't do it. It's not sustainable. I need to stop. And I think some of us need to remember that it's okay to say no. Even if it's nice, even if it's, do you want to hang out tonight? It's okay to say no sometimes, because we need to stop. You know, I know that there's Ben and Emma, when they say they're having Friday night is their family night, it's their family night. If they're getting invited to something else, it's their family night, even if that's great. It's something that's a non-negotiable, and we need to put these non-negotiables into our rhythms of this is what I'm doing, regardless of what else comes up. To refocus one day in your week genuinely can give meaning to the whole of the rest of it. When we really recenter things and we rest and we stop and we are thankful for what has happened and what has come before, and we're thankful for what's going to come next, and we celebrate all of that, it refocuses everything, it shifts stuff, and it gives meaning to the rest of the week. And we need to remember that our rest and our work are worship. One is not, and the other one is having a day off from worship. It doesn't work like that. They're both worship. Our lives are worship. Worship is surrender. When we surrender our work to God and we surrender our rest to God and allow him to fill in the blanks, then he does. And Jesus says in the Bible very clearly that he's Lord over both. He's Lord over rest, and he's Lord over the Sabbath. Sabbath fulfills us and it finishes us. And if we want God to honour the work that we're doing, whatever that looks like, your job or your other responsibilities, if we want God to honour that, we must rest. We must be thankful for what he's done and for who he is, and we must celebrate what we have already. It's not about, I need the next thing, I need the next thing. What do we have and what are we thankful for? That's kind of what we do with Sabbath. Think of the story in the New Testament where Jesus' disciples go out on the boat, and they have been out all night fishing, and they've had their nets over, and they've caught nothing at all night. And then Jesus comes along and says, put them on the other side, try it my way. And they're like, okay, sure, whatever you say. Doubtful, but they do it because there's something different about this guy. I'll give it a go, may as well, got nothing to lose. We've literally caught nothing. So they put their nets over the other side, and then they are overwhelmed by the number of fish that they catch, the number of fish that come in that nearly sinks the boat. And what that is a really beautiful picture of how when we give our work to God, trusting that he knows what he's talking about, that he knows what he's doing, he blesses it. And actually he does more with it and gives us more fruit with it than we would have ever seen if we just kept going on our own strength and going in our own effort, hoping that it was going to work out. When we hand it over to God, that's when we see real breakthrough. And the same is with the Sabbath. When we give the Sabbath to Jesus, when we say, this is your time, this is a day set apart for you and for us, believing that he redeems work, believing that he sanctifies your work, something happens, again, something shifts. And it's the same sort of idea as when we give sacrificially. You know, when we're like, I'm not sure I can give this, I'm not sure I can afford it, but we do it anyway because we trust that God is our provider and he will provide. It's the same sort of thing, that when we trust that God will bless our rest and bless our work, we can leave it undone and trust that he's going to take care of it. Those guys that I work with, that I'm like, what's going to happen to them if I don't answer the call? Actually, I trust God with them. God has hold of them and God will keep them sustained way better than I could, thank goodness, because it would be a horrible job if it was all down to me. But when I actually trust God, you're going to take care of this, I can stop for the day because you are working even when I stop. That's again when we see real breakthrough. And I can say for me, since we've been practicing Sabbath, I am way more productive. I see things get done way quicker than they would have before because I'm inviting God into everything, into my work and into my rest. God doesn't just want a little bit of our lives, he wants all of it. It's to surrender our lives to him, and that includes our rest and it includes our work.